A lot got done this week. We started out at the Maritime Center, doing a lot of detail work on the dinghy, and I got to bring it home, and we're going to show you how it looks up on the foredeck of the big boat. And then finally I got to get back to work on Duracell, and got, like I said, a lot done this week, so we're excited to show you. My name is Matt. Follow along as I turn Duracell, the legendary ocean racing sailboat, into a comfortable cruising home. We started week 3 of the Dinghy Build here at the Maritime Center. At this point, we were determined to get the boat structurally finished by the end of the week and back home to get it into primer, but we had a lot of details to take care of first. The first detail is a unique feature of these Scout designs, which are all the holes that go through the gunnel. These holes are used for a number of things, including main sheet leads, oar locks, and as a place to tie the boat down. We used a very handy drill guide to center and square the drill bit on the gunnel and drilled a pilot hole before boring those holes out. Later, we'll glue in some phenolic tubing into those holes to protect the raw edge. We also decided to reinforce the edges of the cockpit with some hardwood, so I routed a rabbet into the edge before gluing in that hardwood rail. After it was glued in, we cleaned it up and glassed over the entire edge of the cockpit. The foils also needed attention. One fill coat of epoxy with graphite had been applied and needed to be sanded down before the next coat goes on. These coatings will fill in the pinholes and smooth out the foils between sanding sessions. We also had the rudder cassettes to work on. These foam pieces are spacers for the rudder cassette that the rudder bears against when it flips up. They're funny shaped pieces that we wanted to get glassed before we do the graphite epoxy fill coat on them as well. The cheeks of the rudder cassette were also put together. This is the advantage of a CNC cut kit. Holes are pre-drilled in exactly the right place for parts to be lined up. The tubes are glued in where bolts will eventually be used to hold the entire rudder assembly together.
You can be liberal with it.
Okay. Very good.
Beautiful.
In my spare time between projects on the dinghy, I was able to finally get a roof on the boat shed. I bought a sheet of greenhouse plastic that was inexpensive and promised to last at least 5 years in the sun. So I'm optimistic that the new shed will keep the boat dry for the duration of the project. Unfortunately, the 50 by 70 foot plastic sheet was not easy to get over the shed. I spent a long evening slowly pulling the plastic over with some of Duracell's old halyards. So we finally got to bring the dinghy home. We're going to load it up onto these sawhorses. We're going to sand it down, get it into primer, and then I'd really like to get it up to the foredeck to see how it looks up on the boat. I got the dinghy set up in the shop and started sanding in preparation for primer. With the right tools, this took a day to get done. The following day, I got the spraying gear together and used the new setup to apply a heavy coat of All Grip's Hull Guard Extra over the deck and hull. I also got a couple more fill coats done on the foils before bed.
Ready?
Yep.
See, this dinghy's so light, even an 8 months pregnant person can carry it. And don't worry about me, I'm fine.
So obviously that is not how we're going to be getting the dinghy on and off the boat. The plan is that we're going to use the halyard, probably like a spinnaker halyard, to hoist the dinghy from the water up onto the foredeck. This is likely how it will be stowed. We're going to off-center it just because it's so narrow. We can scoot it off to the side a little bit, and that way we'll have room for the windlass box and another hatch that's on the starboard side of the boat that's above our bed in the stateroom. This has been the plan, is to kind of offset it a little bit and store it up here on the foredeck. So there is some space between the boat and the mast, and the boat and the bow of the dinghy and the staysail chain plate. It is a big dinghy, it's 14 feet long, but there's plenty of space up on the foredeck for it, especially given how narrow it is. We got a lot of comments wondering why we're not going to use an inflatable dinghy, and we have used inflatable dinghies in the past on previous boats. And they're great. They're a great option. What I wanted was something that was fun to row, really fun to sail. That's really important to me, that I can just jump in a boat and go for a sail if the weather's good or whatever, just something to do in the afternoon at anchor. We lived on our previous boat, Louise, for 5 years, cruising and at anchor, and we had a hard dinghy on that boat as well, and we really loved it. It worked great for everything we needed it to do. We didn't have an engine on board. Plus, Yanni and I and the inspector really love to go for an afternoon, evening sail on board the dinghy from the boat.
La Paz.
Hola, Paz. This one, we're considering doing like an electric outboard on it. If we, can afford it or decide that that's something that would be necessary. But we're hoping that being a rowing and sailing dinghy alone will be enough for getting us to and from shore and whatever we want to do. So we feel like we've come to a good stopping point with the dinghy. We're really happy with how it's turned out. It is in primer. We are going to finish the boat in a few weeks, take you sailing, get the rudder and the rig all put in the boat, see how everything works. It may even be after our baby boy is born. So, but we'd love to take you out on a sail with us when that happens. But for now, we're going to leave it at this and move on.
So new steps, aren't they, Inspector? You nervous?
Last November, my mom and I put a first coat of primer on the doghouse and the cockpit. What I'm using is called All Grips Whole Guard Extra, and it is a tie coat. I've talked about it many times on the show, and what it is a kind of a epoxy primer that lets the fairing compound that I will be using to fair the whole area have really good adhesion to the fiberglass that we've laid up all over the place. And so the really cool thing about this epoxy primer is that it has a 6-month open time like open window, which means that I can apply it, and then anytime within 6 months, I can put another coat on or put the all fair fairing compound on it without having to sand, as long as it's clean. And so my 6 months is up now, and that means I either have to put on fairing compound or put on another coat of the Hull Guard. And I'm not ready to do fairing yet. I hope to sometime later this summer. So I'm going to go ahead and put on another coat of the Hull Guard Extra. I rolled on the initial coats back in November. So I'm going to roll on this coat today. As you well know, I put a new air compressor in so I can spray in here. But spraying uses more material, and I don't need to use a ton of material. I'd rather just lay on a really thin coat just to like restart my time for applying more material later. So anyway, today I've got it all clean. I washed it with soap and water, and Riley was here earlier this week and he pressure washed for me. And as you can see, it's bright white in here. I'm going to get a coat on. So thanks for watching. We're very happy with how the bow sheds turned out, how the dinghies turned out. Frankly, they took a lot longer than we expected them to. So next week, we're going to catch up on some things, and we're going to skip the video next week. But the week after, we have a really, really fun project plan that I've been looking forward to for a long time. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.